That's the dangerous thing. The reason why I need weapons is I do not have a particular set of skills, and so if something happens, I need a weapon because I'm big, but
Great way
I'm
to
also
start
clumsy.
Mother's Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Pastor's Hangover. My name is Melissa, and thanks for joining us this week. We have some fresh faces chatting with us today on The Hangover. We have Pastor Hal Mayer.
Happy Mother's Day week.
Happy Mother's Day week. We have Pastor Jeanna White.
So great to be here today.
And Pastor Mike Ash.
And happy post Mother's Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are those two separate
Yes.
things?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys for being here. We're going to chat and dive in. And each week on the Pastor's Hangover, we talk about the overflow of the weekend message, which was called Godly Moms by Pastor Mike Shared. And so go watch it on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you watch Godly Moms. You can find it on the GFC Florida channel. But we're excited to hear more, one from Jeanna White's perspective on being a godly mom, and really hear more about your message and your heart. But we have a question that I had to ask right off the bat.
Great.
Somebody wanted to know, are you living with fear, and how do you deal with the fear that someone is going to break into your house? Especially that you shared with us this weekend that you were in a gang. So are you worried someone's going to break into your house was the question.
That's a great question. I'm not worried about someone breaking into my house. I think there is something built in the heart of a man that wants to protect his family and is always thinking about scenarios of what I would need to do. Going out to eat, you're thinking about the exits and the entrances and what you would do and what you would use for
Jerry
a weapon.
has a baseball bat under the bed.
Oh, I have a baseball bat in my car. I've got weapons throughout my house that I have random places that just in case something happens and I'm in this room. I think I really think it's a guy thing.
Okay.
Like guys just have this idea of we need to protect that whole idea. And so so it's not fear, it's preparation.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike has a particular set of skills that just in case somebody tries to take out his family.
That's the dangerous thing. The reason why I need weapons is I do not have a particular set of skills. And so if something happens, I need a weapon because I'm big, but I'm also clumsy.
Mother's Day.
Yes. Yeah.
Weapons and protection. That is awesome.
Really leads us in where we want to go.
Absolutely.
I think so. If the fans of the Pastor's Hangover know that this is how we pretty much start every week. So tell us about your heart on the message, anything additional you wanted to share, and then Jeanna, we'd love to hear your perspective kind of as a mom hearing that message and how you kind of empower that in your own life.
Yeah, I think for being able to speak to moms, it's such an honor to be able to do that. There's such a high regard for what moms do obviously in our society. I feel like that's a pretty basic statement, but for me, being able to speak to them, challenge them, and that they would let me do that. I think for moms, to let someone stand up who's obviously never been a mom and talk about what godly moms do, for them to be open to that, I think is so special. And then for me to be able to share my story about my mom. And honestly, this is probably the first time that I've certainly shared that in depth about it. Yeah. So it was a very special weekend to be able to speak to moms, and a very special weekend to be able to share about the story with my mom.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. It was super transparent and vulnerable, and I think people really appreciated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mother's Day is, being a mom is the hardest thing I've ever done, the biggest calling on my life. And Mother's Day week in particular is super special in thinking back on all my memories of a mom, but also the women around me, like some of my friends who aren't moms, or some of my friends. I have a dear friend who lost her mom recently, and so it really is like thinking about those women in my life, in all different seasons as a mom, in different. Mother's Day isn't easy for everyone. Like I learned years ago in ministry that some women actually skip Mother's Day, just because of how hard it is to come to church. And so for Mother's Day, my daughter-in-law, Callie, has really taught me, she's so great at loving people, to really be intentional to all of those women around me, just to reach out, during that week. But loved your message, loved the message about being a godly mom, and, still learning, because now my kids are adults. So now I'm in the season of raising kids, and now, Jerry and I are parenting adult children. And so that's a fun season as a mom.
That's really cool. And we appreciate your perspective. We're glad you're here. And we got a lot of questions this week.
I don't get to add anything to it?
Sorry.
Wow. I missed one podcast.
Tell
And now I'm like not even.
Well,
Melissa's already written.
We're not going to
off,
ask
man.
you what you thought about the message towards moms.
No. Hal's my favorite. He's a part of the original cast.
Okay.
So tell us, Pastor Hal.
Well, one thing I just wanted to add to it, and this didn't come till after, or I would have given it to you in feedback, because I thought one of the things that Moses' mom did really well that we tend not to do until later on in life was she basically put her son in God's hands. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do as parents, if not mothers especially, of going, hey, I really don't have the power to control this. Like, my kid is in God's hands, whether or not I put him there or not. And she had to do it at a much earlier age of just going, God, this whole plan doesn't seem to make any sense. But I'm going to go ahead and trust that you're going to do what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's good.
And I think that's I think that's one of the hardest things, but it's something that we have to do, because until then, my goodness, worry and fear will be a regular part of what it means to be a parent. But see, that was good stuff to add.
It was
I
good
appreciate
stuff.
you, Pastor Hal. You know that.
Way to go.
Well, one of the
Against
first
all
questions
odds.
we have is about the story. So maybe you can tell kind of the abridged version of it here. But the question was, through the story, right, Moses is put in the river in a basket and ends up that Pharaoh's daughter picks him up. And then Moses' sister is there. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
So the question we got was, how is she there? Did she follow him down the river? Does she have access to Pharaoh's daughter? How did she end up in that situation?
Yeah, the story is that she followed him down there.
Yeah.
She kind of stayed with the basket. You know, it's interesting. The story is that Pharaoh required that every male baby to be thrown in the Nile River. Technically, Moses' mom did what was required. She made a basket. She put him in the Nile River. It's interesting that how the story goes, and put him in the Nile River, and then the sister followed and kind of waited to see. And as soon as Pharaoh's daughter saw the baby, brought Moses over, she kind of made herself known. And so we don't know if it's she put Moses in a place where she knew that Pharaoh's daughter came out. So that could have been very strategic on Moses' mom's part. So it leaves a lot of guessing in that story, trying to figure out what that was. Another interesting thing about the story is that when you read it, is that Moses' like his birth parents were Levites, which were priests in the nation of Israel. And so they obviously very spiritual, very praying through it all. So it doesn't say how much God was leading her in the process, but there's a sense of that, you know, God's kind of working this whole story out, and the sister follows along. So that's how she ended up there.
And then they go and get the mother, right? Can you tell the rest of the story of sister?
So the sister speaks up. So it's almost that when I read it, the thing that caught me was Pharaoh found Moses, was crying, and the sister spoke up, and almost, and it doesn't say this, but it's almost before the Pharaoh's daughter has the ability to actually do what she was supposed to do, which is take the baby and throw him in the river. The daughter kind of speaks up and almost speaks to the compassion Pharaoh's daughters and gives her an option other than throw him in the river. And the option is not take him home with you. It's, hey, do you want me to go get someone to take care of the baby for you? She says yes, and Moses' sister went and just got Moses' mom because her body was at a place where she could feed this baby. And so, and then Pharaoh's daughter pays Moses' mom to take care of her own son. And so there's no real way for Pharaoh's daughter to know that. It didn't say that she knew that, but to take care of Moses for a time. And Hal, you may have done some research on this. I don't know how long that time was.
No, it's pretty sweet that she got paid to take care of her own kid.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome, huh?
God takes care of it.
I think that's what all the stay-at-home moms are like. Hey, can I get paid to do this, please?
This would be great. So yeah, it's cool the way God orchestrates Moses' story, even from that young age, to bring him into the house of Pharaoh.
So cool. And it's cool to just see the Mother's Day message kind of weaved through that story, right? So I'm glad we started with that story. And, you know, you talked about godly moms protect, provide, and prefer. And you talked about your relationship with your mom, and it all just came together so beautifully. But something that I think is kind of heavy on people's hearts that we got a few different people ask, like, what if my parent is toxic? And how do I have that relationship without getting hurt?
Yeah.
And what if they didn't protect, provide, and prefer for me?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
What would your advice be to those people kind of dealing with that situation? They didn't have a mom
Yeah.
like Moses' mom
Yeah.
who did those 3 things for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Well, I think a little bit of that actually goes back to the message that I did on boundaries. Because I do. I think you got to look at it and realize where they are. And then how do I start a relationship, but also keep myself protected?
Mhm.
How do I keep from allowing that in?
Mhm.
And I think it's not an easy journey. And I think
Mhm.
there are times where you have to cut off those
Mhm.
scenarios because it's not going to help you. I mean, we've shared it before, even with my wife, Christy, she had to cut off certain people, especially for seasons, because it just
Mhm.
wasn't helpful.
Mhm.
And so, and I think it's the thing when we talk about this and we talk about the restoration, God can do all these things. And sometimes it's from a long time of prayer before that relationship ever starts back up again.
Mhm.
And so I'll say in the toxic environment, it does. You seek help, you ask opinions of other people, go, hey, how do you feel about this? Also, like other godly opinions, and then you walk through it. But I would like to say this kind of on the other side. I think a lot of times we can go throughout our life where our parents have apologized, our parents have tried to make things right, but we still won't let things go. And I do think there's a time where we have to be able to go, you know what? I'm going to forgive. Or, I mean, I'll tell you this, every parent messes up their kid in some way, form, or fashion. I've only been a parent for so long, and I think like 2 years into it, I'm like, can we start over? I think I've already we've already incurred a lot of counseling at this point. But it's one of those things, and like even me and my sister, like we had godly parents, but it doesn't mean everything went right.
Yeah.
And so at some point you got to go even with a lot of the small things and go, you know what? They were trying their best.
Yeah.
None of this was meant to hurt me. This was just them trying to do what they could do with what they learned from their parents and them trying to do better than their parents.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a mix in that. And I think we're so quick as a society just to cut off many times. And so we do, depending on where you're at, man, we spend time in prayer. We spend time asking God. And then we open up doors as they can be opened up and pray for the best. But that doesn't mean just let toxicity back in.
Yeah. I love what you said about forgiveness because I think forgiveness paves the way for figuring out how to honor a parent, you know, and be honoring while holding those boundaries that are necessary. But that forgiveness, it just, you know, sets us free to figure out that balance, you know, in a way that starts with forgiveness.
Yeah, and I think it's starting even in the process. If you come from a toxic environment and you were raised in a toxic environment, that's how you would describe it. That is your normal.
Yeah.
And so it feels normal to be in a toxic environment. And so if you're moving out of that, most likely you know it's not right, but you don't know what right is. And so I think starting in a place, for me, I think you need a guide on the outside, whether that be a small group or a counselor. For me, it was a counselor. Working through all of this stuff, I would not have gotten to where I was with my mom without a counselor working through the forgiveness process and the journey and being able to point out like, hey, that communication style, that's not normal. And even the boundaries to set up, having someone to guide you through it, because that our tendency is you'll repeat what's normal. And so you know it's not right, but it's almost like muscle memory. You'll just keep doing what's toxic. And so you really need someone that's further ahead or that can help guide you through the process to get to a place where you are creating a non-toxic environment for you and your family and who you are, but also to reconcile in a relationship to go, in order for me to remain healthy, how close can I get to them? How emotionally attached can I be to them? And if they're willing to grow, then fine, then you can move the boundaries around. But you really got to start with yourself first. And so I think doing that is so important. And so go get someone on the outside to help you through it is going to help you guide, because I don't know if anyone really truly can do it on their own.
Right. And no one can guilt us back into a relationship better than our family. Just in all honesty. And so it's tough because I remember even talking about the boundaries. I had people like, but they're going to say this. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean it's okay. And I'll just say this too. Mike made a great point of just the idea of like, what's normal. You know, it's not right. If you ever say like, that's just what my family does, or we're, you know, we're Irish, we're Italian, we're this. So this is what, no. That doesn't mean it's okay. And
well, because we learn good ways to describe bad behavior.
We do.
We use phrases and go, well, they're just this, or they're just loud, or that's the way they act. And we've learned how to describe it because even though you may have grown up in a toxic environment, to admit that it's toxic, like wholeheartedly, and to call things as they are, is there's a component of admitting that maybe there was something about you that wasn't right. And so most people can go, that was toxic, but it's hard to actually see the parts of it that were, because in order to do that, it's almost admitting maybe I'm not okay, maybe my past isn't okay. And so we've learned all these phrases to describe bad behavior in a good way. So things like that, like, well, my family's just Irish. Well, yeah. So it's even investigating some of those phrases and going, what does that really mean? And am I covering for them and covering for their bad behavior?
Yeah.
And your boundaries talk was awesome. And even diving into it on the podcast to just talk about all healthy relationships have to start from a place of healthy boundaries,
Absolutely.
right? That was how we kicked off this whole series on relationships. So if you miss that part, the rest of it is going to be out of a place of unhealthiness, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. The next question, I can't wait to hear what Pastor Jeanna has to say. Does a mom have to stay home with her kids to have a God-centered marriage and a God-centered family?
Wow.
Which just, if you didn't watch the message, I didn't say this. I didn't insinuate this.
You,
I don't know where someone came up with this. How did this question come?
Well, I think
true.
women wrestle with that. And so I
Yeah.
think anytime there's a message about moms, I think that mom guilt thing, working moms and stay-at-home moms, and but this is a big one. I love this conversation though, because I can go back to my story. Growing up, that was my view of marriage, and what was best for my family and kids was for me to stay home. Well, then in staying home with the kids when they were little, I really started to feel a calling to go back to work, and then you start to talk to other women and now peers. I would talk to like other young moms, and they're wrestling with that too. So I really learned to look for some mentors in my life to really ask them about that. And, every single piece of advice I got was to go back with your husband and pray together and look at scripture together, and you and Jerry figure out what's best for your family. And so for me, it was, honoring my husband and us praying through that together. And then Jerry encouraged me and really felt like that was what was best for us. So we felt like we were honoring God in unity together. And so that did look like me. And I had seasons, I worked full time, I worked part time, and then once the kids were in elementary school, I was full time in ministry. But for me, it was that, that decision for Jerry and I together, and that's hard when you both have parents, you both have, great people in your life. And we wanted to gather godly advice, but then figure that out together for us. That Jimmy and Irene talk about that couple bubble. Remember, if you were at marriage conference?
And what do you do here? We didn't even properly introduce you.
Yes. So I am our executive family ministry pastor. So I get the honor of working with our clubhouse teams, our zone teams, and our united teams. And I actually sit on lead team with Pastor Mike. And so love what I do. Best job in the world.
You have a huge role here. Right. And if your kid benefits from any of those children ministries, or you've seen kids or know kids, that is all because of Jeanna's leadership. I'm speaking correctly, right?
Gosh.
So we are
100%.
grateful
I have the best
for what you do and who you are. But do you guys have any perspective as the husband or significant
the amazing
other?
part about Jeanna is even when you're getting in trouble, she's smiling at you. And she's like, hey,
That is true. She
you're
can say
an
the
awful
meanest thing.
person.
Yeah,
You
the
should
nicest
stop
way.
that. No. What's sad to me so often is when there's such anger and just this meanness across the board instead of conversation. Because of what I see with the mom guilt, it's if you go back to work, then you look down on those that didn't, and you find all the reasons why they're not good enough. And then those that stay at home, look at all the reasons that, and it's like, no, the problem is imbalance. The problem is not paying attention to your kids. The problem is seeing your kids as just a burden that God hasn't given to you, and that's the problem. And so that's the thing. You can be a mother and a father while working, but it's
I
being
love
purposeful
that.
in it. You have to be very purposeful
because
in it.
I think for me it was the focus on our calling as parents and my calling as a mom and how strong that was. And it is the most important job I will ever have, and focusing on that and not what that looks like for my work schedule, because honestly, I was more balanced. Now I also had the season of the blessing of staying home with my kids for a little while. And so it's not comparing back and forth, but going what's best for your family in the season.
It's great. I don't know that I have anything to add to this. Because I think
Mike's like, I already got enough hate.
Honestly, if you can do it, great. If you don't do it, great. Like I really think it's up to each individual family and each individual mom to decide what you want to do. My wife is the most godly and the sweetest mom in the world, and staying home was we definitely tried doing it, and it was tough. She's always had a job, always had a side thing, always had a project, and so for her it was a better fit. She was more alive when she had an outlet like that, and so for us that was a great thing. So I don't think it's one way or the other. And the other piece to it is if it's not true everywhere. Because when you go to other countries and other parts of the world and other, like the idea that anyone cannot work, most of the world has to work. So to think that because in third world countries people are working, that they're less godly moms, I think it's a very big thing to jump. But I do think mom guilt is a tough thing, and I think that is a thing that kind of asks all these questions. But it's doing what's right for you and your family without the pressure of what society or people around you or social media is telling you should do.
And I would just like to add to, you talked about providing, and you gave the example of Leanne finding everything in the house. And I just want you guys to know Leanne is so much more than that. The man that you see before us today would not be possible without Leanne. Leanne is the most
I did not say that's all she does.
organized.
Specifically, she finds the mayo.
Leanne is
exactly what you said.
Is the most organized. Like if you can find a picture of Mike before Leanne, you can go, oh, that is
true.
Very
she
different.
is the most organized. All the different types of flours and spices and are all labeled. And they're all in the right place. She is the most organized. She does meal prep on Sunday night to meal prep for lunch and dinner through the whole week. Wow. And so she makes
amazing.
like a big thing of chicken, a big thing of vegetables, she is driven and organized. Those are the two things that and so she's got
everything planned out. Because I remember the first time we were like, hey, we should hang out. And Leanne's like, I've got a spot in 3 months. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have everything planned out.
I hang out with you guys like once a month.
I know, but I remember like the first time. It was just like, I was like, dang, you guys, it's just, Mike wouldn't be the man that he is.
I'm not that
today
organized.
We are very scheduled. So when I say I don't know where something is and she's like, we have that, she actually knows. Like she knows we have it. She's not guessing. She's just that organized. Yeah.
Just felt that. Need to add that in.
Oh, I'm Team Leanne too. She is amazing. And maybe, we've been doing cooking segments of the Pastor's Hangover too. We had a bacon one, so maybe we have to get Leanne in to teach some of our viewers about meal prepping.
That'd be great.
She's great at that.
I've seen her on Instagram.
Yes.
And she just made her own 3 different types of gluten-free sourdough. Oh. And you have to make like a whole starter and feed it and do stuff. I
jumped on the trend until I found a local shop that sells a loaf for like $5.99.
Chrissy the other day is like, am I supposed to be making sourdough? I was like, no, don't worry about it. We don't need another. We have a lot of machines already underneath our cabinet.
It's super hard to do, and gluten-free is super hard to do. And she's like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm like, okay. But she's also, she's made her own almond milk before. She's like, there are a few of those things she's done, and she made her almond milk for probably 2 months. And it was like, number one, to make your own almond milk is way more expensive than buying almond milk because you have to buy all these almonds and figure out a way to milk them. And
I have a thing called, it's called an almond cow.
Okay.
And it's like a machine that's really pricey.
No way.
So we didn't do it pricey. It was like in a sheet and there's water and all this stuff. Anyways, and she loves coming up with new things. She's innovative. She's always figuring out how to do things on her own. So I always say the only reason why I don't eat healthy, but the only reason why I eat semi-healthy is because she makes the food. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in an office with the two of you. She had all of your meals prepared for you.
It's
It was
great.
That's
incredible.
awesome.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
They
Yeah.
actually say if
Poor
if
Jerry.
you ever want to actually eat the right way, the best thing that the rich people do is they get a chef. And so because if everything's already prepared for you,
Or marry one.
or marry one,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
So, to recap, right? You have to do what's best for your family.
There you go.
Have a conversation,
Yes.
husband and wife, whatever's best for you and your spouse. And I think kind of the younger generation, I've seen the opposite, like of mom guilt. Like if you're not a stay-at-home mom making sourdough and preparing all organic for your kids, what are you doing? I can't believe you're working. So I've seen it go that way, which I feel like the previous generation swung the other way. Like, why aren't you providing, contributing? So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what people think on social media or what people say.
Yeah.
Or what other families do that you see. It really matters that you and your spouse are on the same page and moving in the right direction for your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a parent and have gotten comments on the podcast that I should not be one anytime soon. But I'm just working.
That's off of a very specific
I'm working to earn your
situation
guys'
that we
favor
talked
back
about.
by saying good parenting
Yes.
things.
I think you
Yes.
will be a great parent
You're gonna
one
be an
day.
amazing mom
I think
one
my mom
day.
paid you to say that.
I think your mom, speaking of your mom, Melissa's mom paid me the nicest compliment this past week about the Mother's Day message. And it was so sweet because I know I don't want to compliment you, Melissa, but your mom is like the sweetest person in the world. I don't want to say that's why you're also sweet,
Right,
but
right.
she is like the sweetest person. So I'm so glad that she was super nice.
Number one listener. And I think what impacted her that has impacted a lot of people was you talked about losing your mom.
Yeah.
And my mom lost her mom at 32.
Yeah.
My best friend lost her mom at 18.
Yeah.
Like this is really something people, go through. And not a lot of times it gets talked about on Mother's Day or a day like that. So if you fall into that category, go and listen to the message. It'll bless you and help you as you kind of go on that path. And you lost your mom recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long
It'll be 2 years in August.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to talk about it and the story that I shared this past weekend about, being so distant and then end up being super close. Just so thankful for it. And honestly, one of the in James, it talks about that, that count it all joy when you experience trials of many kinds. And I think when going through this, the idea of how do you count it joy when you're going through this? But I think we saw these moments of, like for Mother's Day in 2022, it was her last Mother's Day. And we've never done, I've lived apart from her for 20 years. I flew up to Indiana. I got all my siblings, all the grandkids, and surprised her with, we did kind of a shrimp boil thing, but she used to have these plants hanging out outside. And so she has to like plant the plants every year because it's winter in Indiana and they all die. So surprised her, and we all kind of as a family planted these plants together. And I thought for her, it was probably the best Mother's Day that she'd ever had. And I know that she didn't need the memories, obviously, but she wanted to make sure that the memories that were created, that she was still creating good memories with the family. And so it was like that, like the coolest day. And so I would have never done it. If she would have lived 5 more years and then it happened suddenly, it would have never been that intentional. Going up with my kids, it was like God gave us 5 months to be super intentional. And so as terrible as it is, I was so grateful for those 5 months because the conversations we had, the experiences we had, we could be so intentional with those things. And so as much as it is the worst gift in the world, but it is a gift because you have time. Cancer eats away little by little, but the intentionality. So we had some of the greatest memories in that time, but obviously it's still terrible and still very difficult. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing it. I know it reached a lot of people. Any closing thoughts from Pastor Jeanna? We're so glad you're here.
Pastor Jeanna, you should
Hal.
share a closing
Yes.
thought talking about Mother's Day. You're the mom.
Gosh, I think about, oh my goodness, again, being in family ministry, I get to connect with you moms on all of our campuses every weekend. You guys are amazing. You're doing a great job, and you are raising up the next generation at Grace. And so, we talk about this in family ministry all the time. We get your kids 1 hour a week. You guys are the biggest spiritual influence in your child's life. And so we want to be there for you as a church.
Yeah.
Think about all of our ministries, and we do that with you moms in mind. And so thankful for you.
Well,
Happy Mother's Day.
Yay. Happy
Yes.
Mother's Day. Thank you, moms. We appreciate all of you guys. And thank you guys for being with
Yeah,
us.
this
Yeah,
was
thank
fun
you.
week of the Pastor's Hangover. And we will see you all next week.